Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen, and today we're going to talk about rich people fleeing the communist California tax trap. So we're going to jump in and discuss a little bit about how they have this proposed wealth tax coming on, what it means to potentially a bunch of people, how it's retarded, and my thoughts on it in general. So before we get started, if you haven't already, smash the subscribe button, click the notification bell, turn YouTube notifications on, and let's get started. All right, so this is something that has come up just recently. California is basically on the verge of bankruptcy. They've been on the verge of bankruptcy for a while. I like to call them the United Soviet Socialist Republic of California. Don't have a lot of respect for how they run their state, their tax policies, all this kind of thing. I think that it's pretty much nonsense, and it's not surprising to me that increasingly you're seeing people fleeing California and heading to Austin, Texas, among other places. Austin is part of Texas. Texas has no state income tax, so they're saving a bunch of tax. Now, recently, Corona has gone and hit the state hard, as it has in many other places. But I find it a little bit ironic that they're a place that kind of touts, oh my gosh, we better not open up because we're going to put people at risk, but then are going to complain and try and rob people of their hard-earned money and wealth when they can't afford to pay their bills. So this seems to me like just a ridiculous concept. And so here's the bottom line of what they're proposing. They're proposing a wealth tax, which could be retroactive for 10 years. In other words, people who have left the state would have to pay taxes for 10 years after they left. Their moral justification of this is, hey, you came to California and you built this company, built this wealth, whatever, and so we're going to tax it. And I think that that's pretty much nonsense. It's nonsense in a bunch of regards. So I'm going to talk about the tax aspect of it a little bit because tax is kind of one of the areas that I play in, but also I think just in general, there's a populist movement, maybe populism isn't the right word, but anyway, this kind of what people are calling socialism is not really socialism, actually. I like to throw around the term communism, but it's not really communism. But this idea that we should tax rich people a ton, and hey, great, listen, why would we want to have billionaires? Let's tax billionaires out of existence. Never mind the fact that they represent an enormous share of your income, right? We're seeing something similar in New York, people fleeing, going to Florida. Governor Cuomo is kind of concerned about this, given that like 50% of their state revenue comes from the 1%. So, what is it they are going to do? Now, interestingly, if you look at a state like Texas, what Texas is doing is they are taxing their real estate higher, right? Which actually I think has a bunch of different merit to it and a whole argument around that. There's a chart you can go and check out where the OECD did some studies about what taxes negatively affect the economy most. And so they looked at 4 different types of tax, and it works basically like this. If you have corporate tax, that's the worst for your economy. And this makes sense because it's easy for corporations to relocate, right? And corporations pay a lot of attention to their corporate tax. The next is personal income tax. If personal income tax is high, that's going to hurt the second most. The one that is lesser is consumption tax. So this is sales tax, VAT, this sort of thing, potentially taxes on, vice tax, right? So you tax gasoline, you tax cigarettes, you tax gambling, etc., right? And then the last is real estate. If you think about this, this makes sense, and you'll notice that Europe, being, as much as we like Europe or not, has really gone with this trend, okay? They've gone with this trend of saying, hey, we're gonna lower the corporate income tax rate. The typical corporate income tax in Europe is around like 21%, and we're going to raise VAT instead. Now, this increases the cost of living for local people, etc. But if you just think about it, you don't really decide where to move based on the VAT rates, but a lot of people decide where to move based on their personal income tax rates. Kind of ironic because in theory, VAT could maybe take a bit more of a bite, but people don't count it that way, right? And so as a result, it's just more effective for the overall economy because people end up moving to these places that have this lower corporate tax and lower personal tax. They move to the place with lower corporate tax. That affects it less because of the fact that businesses employ people and then people have to be there regardless, right? That's kind of the thinking in that regard. Anyway, so California's come out and they've said, hey, listen, we're proposing this wealth tax. Now, they proposed a bunch of other tax changes, etc. And I think, to quote Joe Rogan, he said, look, they're broke. Literally, California is one of the most indebted places on earth. Literally, the state has more debt than most countries, okay? And so if you have a state, why do they have that? It's not because taxes aren't high. Taxes are basically the highest in the US, right? And it's not that people don't make a lot. The incomes are high. So not only do you have high incomes, but you have high taxes, right? So if you compare this to, for instance, I was originally born in Alberta, Canada. There's these transfer payments between provinces in Canada, and Albertans often complain about the fact that Quebec ends up getting a whole bunch of money from these transfer payments and Alberta does not, right? Why is this? Well, this is because of the fact that Alberta tends not, and by the way, Alberta right now has a deficit and Quebec has a surplus. And if you look at this, it's like, yeah, but Albertans make like an average of $90,000 a year. People in Quebec make like around $50,000 a year. And, the taxes are higher in Quebec and they're lower in Alberta. So, that's kind of what's going on. But in this case, so you could make the argument that Alberta should raise their taxes, right? In this particular case, when we're talking about California, they have high incomes and they're not raising their taxes, and they've raised their taxes. So they don't have a revenue problem, right? They have a spending problem. And giving them more money will not solve their bad spending. They're just a wasteful government. It's a disaster. Horrible, horrible thing. Great, like beautiful area, right? Beautiful part of the world. Obviously, you've got the mountains there, you've got the ocean there, the weather is some of the best in the country, some people might argue some of the best in the world, there's lots of infrastructure there, there's a bunch to love about California in that sense. But in terms of how their government runs things and the consequences for their people, it's horrible, just horrible. They've basically been able to ride off the coattails of Silicon Valley and maybe kind of like the Hollywood thing for quite a long period of time. And now what we're seeing is that a lot of people are leaving Silicon Valley. They're saying, hey, listen, it's too expensive to live here. We don't like the culture. It's gotten kind of nuts. And so why don't I go to Texas where I can pay, lower taxes and it's really cool. There's a great community there, etc. Or, they're going to other places, right? There's a whole bunch of places you could go. Potentially Nevada, potentially, I've heard some people saying they're going to Ohio, interestingly. Anyway, the bottom line is, this is the thing. Now, if you're in California, should you be worried about the fact that, hey, listen, you may have this retroactive tax for, 10 years? Probably not. In my opinion, if you look at the way that the states are governed, like state autonomy is really important in the American Constitution, the American structure of governance. And being able to tax citizens of another state just doesn't sound to me like something that would fly in court. So, we'll see what actually ends up happening. But I think it is an indication of the overall trend. And a lot of people are talking about how, hey, listen, post-corona, your taxes may be going up. So is this an indicator of something that, you should start planning for now? Maybe it is. There's a lot that can be done for many, many people. And, every dollar that you give to a wasteful government is a dollar less that you have for yourself and for the causes and whatever it is that's important to you. So, you can decide for yourself. But in my opinion, giving money to those, wasteful morons is really not a good idea. So anyway, take it for what it is. Let's see, what else can I tell you about that? The last thing that I wanted to mention is, we're not just talking about the wealth tax. The wealth tax is an interesting thing, but we're talking about taxes in general. And a lot of this, I think, is driven by what I consider to be a really outdated view of the world, okay? So they've done some studies in the past that suggest that people don't relocate that much based on taxes, okay? And you'll see a lot of people argue this. They'll say, look, people don't actually move, they're gonna stay here, we've got the sunshine, we've got this, we've got that. I think that they underestimate how much the world has changed, in particular in about the last 10 years, for sure the last 20 years, but within the last 10 years. See, historically, what was the deal? The deal was that your income was really, it was geographically constrained, right? If you had a business, you probably had an office, you probably had people there, etc. Where you made your money had a lot to do with how much money you made. And it wasn't so easy to just up and relocate to another state, let alone another country. The world has changed. Today, I think The Economist was predicting before Corona came around that there was going to be 1 billion location-independent workers by 2030. In my view, Corona has accelerated things, and so as a result, you're going to have a lot more location-independent workers by that point in time. These people don't need to be anywhere specifically. Like, they could go wherever they find, if it's whether they like the weather, whether they like the services, whether they like the tax rates, whether they like the infrastructure, whether they like the geography, whatever it is that they particularly like, they can pick and choose. And I think you should too, right? I certainly do. I'm interested in saying, hey, listen, let's optimize my life. Let's optimize what it is that I can get out of this. And so I think that over the coming while, you're going to see the effects of people being mobile is going to start to have pretty major societal implications. It's going to take some time to, sufficiently have a wave that rolls out. But if you just look at the number of houses that have gone on the market in San Francisco over the last little while, it's like this massive jump. You look across the country, it isn't, right? Somebody sent me some charts, and yeah, San Francisco is just going crazy. Joe Rogan is mentioning how all kinds of people are leaving. I certainly know all kinds of people are leaving. Tim Ferriss wrote some stuff or put some stuff out a while back when he left and went to Austin. I have friends and clients who have gone to those different places as well as other places. I think it's crazy. So anyway, choose what it is that you like. But in my opinion, you have the ability to choose today. And why would you choose something where you were going to basically be abused and exploited? What more are they giving you than the next state over, let alone the next country over? So that's my thoughts. If you would like some assistance with figuring out how to either relocate, get residency somewhere else, get citizenship somewhere else, I'm having a lot of people contact me right now interested in citizenship by investment programs. They're concerned that the tax policy in the US is going to become draconian, that all kinds of different things are going to happen. We'll see what happens, but they're preparing. And so if you're interested in that, if you're interested in tax planning, estate planning, asset protection, that sort of thing, reach out to us. Happy to help you. You can book a call with me. There's a link below, www.clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer, or you can check out offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. Click the like button if you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our videos, and I'm going to see you guys on the next video.